So, how do we take our English language learners and turn them into truly skilled readers? It's not just about understanding the words on a page. It's about building strategic, confident readers who can tackle any text thrown at them. In this explainer, we're going to break down the advanced methodologies that really make that transformation happen.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to kick things off with the 2 core philosophies of reading, and then we'll dive straight into the key strategies for building fluency. From there, we'll look at how a model lesson is actually structured, how to mine texts for all that great language, and finally, how all of this applies directly to a high-stakes exam like the IELTS.
So, where do we even begin? Well, pretty much every modern approach to teaching reading is built on 2 foundational ideas: intensive and extensive reading. Getting this distinction right, honestly, it's the key that unlocks everything else.
And this slide, it just lays out the 2 paths perfectly. Think of intensive reading as putting a text under a microscope. It's all about precision, focusing on understanding every single detail of a short text. Extensive reading, on the other hand, is all about volume and flow. It's reading for pleasure, building up that momentum and confidence by just enjoying longer, easier texts.
To put it another way, intensive reading is that classic classroom exercise. It's a very deliberate stop and start process, a careful dissection of the text to understand exactly how the language is working. The goal here isn't speed at all. It's all about accuracy and really deep analysis. Extensive reading, though, that's where we build fluency. This is where students read widely, often on their own, picking materials they genuinely enjoy. And the trick here is to use texts that are easy enough for them to read pretty quickly. That's what allows them to build momentum, gain confidence, and just soak up the language naturally.
Okay, so if those are the philosophies, what are the actual tools? To create fluent readers, we have to explicitly teach them the strategies they need. It's all about building their personal reader's toolkit.
And here's the core idea right here. Fluent readers don't give every single word the same amount of attention, do they? They just intuitively know what to focus on. Our job as educators is to take that intuition and turn it into a conscious, teachable strategy for every single learner. The first tool in the kit is skimming. This is basically speed reading to get the main idea. It answers that fundamental question. So, what's this text generally about? Just think about how you glance at a news article to decide if you want to read it more closely. Yep, that's skimming in action. Now, the second tool is scanning. And this isn't really reading from meaning at all. It's more like a search function. You have a specific target, a date, a name, maybe a statistic, and you just let your eyes fly over the text to find it, ignoring everything else. It's exactly how you find a departure time on a train schedule. But beyond just skimming and scanning, we need to cultivate these other essential habits. We have to teach students to be active readers. Readers who really engage with the text by predicting content, making educated guesses about new words, and maybe most importantly, always having a clear purpose. Just asking, why am I reading this, can completely change the game. So we've got the approaches and we've got the skills, but how do we pull it all together into a single coherent lesson? Okay, let's walk through a practical model that takes us from the big picture right down to the nitty-gritty details. An effective lesson almost always follows this 3-part structure. We sometimes call it top-down because it starts broad before it narrows in. First, in the pretext phase, you activate what students already know. Then, the text phase guides them through the material, starting with a general skim before diving deeper. And finally, the post-text phase, that's where you can really dig into specific language and extend the topic. This detailed route map here shows just how that process works in practice. I mean, notice the logical sequence of tasks, right? We start broad with prediction, then we move to a fast reading for the general idea, then another fast reading for specific info, and only then do we finally slow down for deep meaning. It really frames reading as a journey, not just a single action. But look, understanding a text is really just the first step. After comprehension, that text transforms into this rich resource for language acquisition. It's time to start mining for gold. And that mining, it starts with asking the right questions. We can push our students to look closer at the language itself. Why did the author choose this specific word instead of another one? What other words does this one usually hang out with? This is how reading directly fuels their vocabulary and deepens their language awareness. And we're mining for so much more than just vocabulary. A text is a living, breathing example of grammar in action. We can analyze paragraph structure, notice how punctuation actually creates meaning, and identify common phrases and idioms. The text itself becomes a practical guide to grammar and style. All right, let's bring all of this into a very real-world context. How do these methodologies actually prepare students for a high-stakes proficiency test like the IELTS? Let's be honest, the IELTS reading test is practically designed to reward these advanced skills. With its long texts and intense time pressure, that slow word-by-word reading, it just isn't an option. Success absolutely demands efficiency, speed, and strategy. And right here, you can see that direct one-to-one connection. That task of matching headings to paragraphs, that's skimming. Finding a specific date to complete a sentence, that is pure scanning. These aren't just abstract skills, they are the exact tools needed to master the exam. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, metacognition. It's not enough to just practice tests over and over. We have to train students to think about their own thinking. What that means is teaching them to pause, identify what a question is really asking for, and then consciously choose the fastest, most effective strategy to find the answer when they're under pressure.
So as we wrap things up, it's really worth asking this final question. While the IELTS is a critical goal for so many, our ultimate aim is much bigger. We are equipping learners with a toolkit not just to pass an exam, but to confidently and capably engage with English texts for the rest of their lives. And that, well, that's the real prize.